Sax, we're having olive fed beef tonight.
Oh, this is the greatest.
Come. You need to try it.
I'll see what I can do.
No, you have to do it. You have to do it, Sax.
Okay.
Once you have
Come
to
on, Sax, commit. No bullshit anymore.
Sax, you cannot imagine what does a beef look like that has been only fed green olives, pitted green olives at that.
I can tell you how it looks. Delicious.
Is it green?
It's the most delicious steak you've had in your life.
It's the most delicious.
All right, I'll come for that.
Okay,
it's incredible.
Awesome.
Sax, you going to drive me with your driver?
Text me your address so I know where to get you.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, this is going to be great. Game on.
Listen to this lineup. Me, J-Cal, Friedberg, Sax, is flying it. This game is going to jump up. This game is going to pop.
No more flips. The flips are ridiculous.
Okay, you know what? Now that Sax is coming, I'm going to tell him to break out the early white truffles.
What?
I'm just kidding.
You're sending me truffle pigs out?
Nat just walked to my office. She looked at me when I said white truffles. She's like...
For bestie dinner. It's happening, everybody.
Oh, it's happening. It's happening.
You know what I saw was Helmuth the other day on one of his heads-up matches where he got in that huge fight with that guy. Did you guys see that? And he called the guy over. I think that's every
match. You just described every match he's ever been.
This was like some heads-up thing. And the guy had flopped some insane, I think it was like quads or something, and Helmuth had like top pair except the border pair.
Yeah.
And Helmuth folded on this guy. It was incredible to watch the play. Like the read from Helmuth was unbelievable. He is incredible. He's a friggin' phenom, that guy.
He's pretty great.
He's got unbelievable.
There's a reason he's the greatest poker player in the world. His reads are unbelievable.
Do you think that what percentage of it is, obviously he is an incredible player, but there's another piece of this that we all see, which is people play into him. They want to be in a hand with him. They want to bust him. So in those tournaments, what do you think?
No, I think what's happening is at the highest level, there's like all these people that have gone in this one direction. And by the way, this is probably we could talk about chess in the same way, which is that you have these solvers, right? There's poker solvers, and now there are these chess solvers. And the young generation spends all this time training on the solvers so that they know every permutation of every move and what people call game theory optimal, or GTO. The problem with GTO is that you can actually be very exploitative against somebody that's actually playing perfectly, because the AI is perfected around what is the rational set of decisions in every spot. And so you can set people up to make a lot of really bad mistakes. And I think Helmuth understands that. And so because he is one of like this dying breed of people that plays live, he's able to just be so exploitative. And these folks that are basically playing from rote memory, right? What is the GTO move in every spot? They end up making a bunch of mistakes and feeding chips into him. And so I think like it's probably the same as sort of this Magnus Carlsen. He kind of knew what to expect from people. And the minute this kid deviated into this realm where you were like, how could you make that decision? Probably because, the computer AI is able to calculate, make a slightly losing move now, 3 moves later, you're going to actually be ahead. It caught him off guard where he was basically like, I think this guy's cheating. Really, really crazy. But I think like if you have a bunch of GTO kids, folks that are a little bit older that have been playing in a live situation can be hyper exploitative.
By the way, this is a good point generally about this gaming, is that computation has played, and computers have played such an incredible role. It almost becomes questionable on how much can the human really differentiate anymore in these games and in these systems. You guys watch the chess players on YouTube, and they'll have solvers live, and they'll be getting live scoring as they kind of walk through a match or walk through.
By the way, Freeberg,
scenarios.
that's the same with poker. You have these HUDs, these heads-up displays, and a lot of the poker sites have basically given up. They try to spot the cheating, and
you can't,
and it could because you have this basically layer that's helping you, and it's effectively impossible because these things run locally. They're screen scraping locally, and you just have no idea, except when they make moves that are just so unpredictable from a human and could only come from a machine.
They're ultimately able to all games maybe become obsolete because there is no real way to qualify the performance of one human against another when the AI itself or the technology or the computing itself, overshadows human potential and human capability.
You guys may not know this story, but when I met Demis, the founder of DeepMind, I got introduced by Thiel like in 2011 or 12, so like a decade ago. And I met him in London. I'll never forget this. We were having breakfast at the Conant Hotel. And he explained to me DeepMind in the context of a game, because at that time, how they were building the first versions of the AI was perfecting how to play certain video games. And I can't remember the name of the video game, but it was one of the famous first-person shooter games. And the whole idea there was like, if you can perfect an AI that basically plays GTO and can win the game, what you've effectively solved for is like a layer of AI that can then solve other generalized problems. I was blown away. I thought, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard a decade ago. So it's pretty natural that they've taken this stuff and adapted it to meet every game. It's a little sad though, too, no? Don't you think?
Yeah,
yeah, but maybe there's a different model of performance for humans that really changes what the gaming is, right?
Well,
like
augmented.
The basics. I don't know what it is. I think that these games themselves completely, the intent of a game, which is to measure one's kind of decision-making abilities, gets obsoleted because the software ultimately is a better decision maker than the human. So the question then is, what is the human going to rise to that creates a new playing field? And I think there's probably elements of creativity and actually using the software to become part of the game that opens up a whole new opportunity for what gaming is. We've been talking about a little bit about video games, but you could see artificial constructs in gaming that arise from the human interacting with the computer and then creating a new sort of playing field in gaming.
Yeah.
Sax, what do you think about all this? You're a big chess player.
Yeah, I've been following it for the last couple of weeks. It's obviously been the big story in the chess world. What basically happened is that a couple of weeks ago, Magnus Carlsen lost that game to Hans, what's his last name?
Niemann, I think.
Niemann, yeah, exactly. And the next day, he pulled out of the tournament. This is the Sinkfield Cup. And he's never pulled out of a tournament before. Everyone was sort of speculating, is he sick or have COVID or something like that? And then he tweeted out a video from some soccer coach saying, I can't talk about it, I'll get in trouble. Yeah. So clearly he was in a passive aggressive way making an accusation. And then he doubled down a few days ago. He was in another tournament and he had to play Hans. I keep forgetting the guy's name.
Hans Niemann.
Niemann, yeah. He had to play him and he resigned on move 2. So basically he doubled down in his accusation, and he won't specifically say what leads him to believe that this guy is cheating, but he thinks he is. He's a young player. He's something like 18, and he's had a pretty meteoric rise in the chess world. I think his rating's gone up a couple hundred points over the last 2 years. It's the fastest rise in chess rating that anyone's ever had before. It's been the case that players have, and young players especially, have risen quickly, but this is it's the biggest.
How is he cheating?
That's happened. Well, that's the thing. So the issue is that it's easy to cheat in online chess, but in over the board, you would either need to have a device or to be signaled by somebody in the crowd. You'd need human assistance or the assistance of a device. It'd almost be like, in casino or something where they're using the contraption on the guy's leg to signal, to information to him. So nobody really knows how he would have done it. And of course, he wasn't caught doing it. So he can never prove that he wasn't. So there's just a real question here.
But they did make some changes after Magnus Carlsen resigned. They put the feed on a 15-minute delay. I think like at some point you're going to have to start wanding people and having them go through a metal detector.
Yeah, they're going to have to toughen up all of the anti-cheating standards.
One of the grandmasters was like, we should play naked in a locker room.
Yeah, there was an online site that basically offered to pay Niemann a lot of money to play basically naked to prove that he could, really do what he's been doing. The theory on why he's not cheating and the rise is justified is that, in theory, this is the argument, is that he's grown up learning from all these neural nets, these not just chess engines. The first generation of chess engines were like Stockfish. They were just computational machines that were programmed by humans with thousands of rules on how to play chess. And then they could just crunch the lines better than a human could. More recently, thanks to DeepMind, it's a whole different type of machine. It's basically these neural networks where all they're programmed with are the rules of chess. And then it plays thousands of games or millions of games against itself, and it learns the best way to play chess. And the neural nets play in a whole different way than Stockfish, than the pure engines. The engines just play like a human that's able to calculate really well. Whereas the neural nets do things like,
this is what I mean. There's sacrifices that a human would never make.
Yeah. They'll make sacrifices for just repeat activity. So, normally when a human makes a sacrifice, they'll recapture the material within a few moves. Whereas, DeepMind will sacrifice a pawn and, just for the positional advantage or for the increase
which doesn't show up for many moves.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And so the ability to model 12 moves out is really,
but that's where I think people thought that Magnus picked up on something, because it's like those sorts of moves are rare in the absence of some layer of intervention, because typically it's like, and Sachs, this much better than I, but it's like, the opening and the closings of all of these chess matches are so tightly regulated. There's not a lot of creativity. It's sort of in the mid game that you have these slight positional advantages and disadvantages. And so I think it was amplified that one of these positional sacrifices made no sense in the context of that game, unless you had the ability to, think really conclusively about 6-7 moves from now. By the way, it's the same thing in poker. So there's a thing, if you guys want to download it, I think it's called Poker Snowy. That was like the first layer of a pretty basic AI, but it's gotten better and better. And really what it allows you to do is in every situational spot, whether it's heads up all the way to a 6-handed ring game, you can really understand, what to do. Now, poker is meaningfully more complicated than chess, as it turns out, because again, you're not playing against one player, you're playing against some umpteen number of players. We don't know when each of them is going to step into a pot or step out of a pot. And then there's all of those elements. So it's a little bit more complicated to build a true kind of like neural net around it. But even still, you can kind of get a sense of what you should be doing in different spots. And what you see is that there's literally like trillions of actions. And so it really is impossible for a human being to really memorize in every single situation what the true, probabilistically weighted GTO optimized move is going to be. And so this is why I think a lot of people, I guess led by Magnus, was saying, how could you have known this unless you were aided by something?
It's pretty clear that this guy cheated.
I think what's profound is that mastery of the game may not be achievable by a human, but mastery of any one of these games may actually be achievable by neural nets. And I think that's what's really frustrating to Magnus and to other top tier players in the world that are the best humans at a particular game, is they're now realizing, that they really aren't the true masters, that the true masters are the neural nets. And more than just the guy cheating, which may feel like bad sportsmanship or whatever, fundamentally, one's ego being built entirely on one's mastery of the game and being the best at the game is fundamentally challenged because a computer is better at the game than you. It's a really profound moment for humans.
Shouldn't be.
I think that ship sailed a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I know the chess world very well.
It was right. Yeah.
Well, no, it was way back when. Remember when Kasparov played Deep Blue, which is the IBM.
Yeah.
That was the first,
which wasn't even a sophisticated neural net. That was just almost deterministically modeled. Yeah, it was a deterministically modeled system.
It was like Stockfish. It was just a number cruncher, and that was when computer intelligence and chess tipped to be able to beat the world champion. Since then, there's no looking back. I think every human who plays in the chess world understands that computers are better, and there's no way for a human to be better than a computer. So, and certainly not a neural net. I mean, Magnus certainly knows that. I don't think anyone's bothered by that. I think that everyone understands that humans play in a certain way, and their goal is to be the best human. I think the concern is just obviously if a human gets aided during a game by computers. But the way that chess works now, the preparation is all about working with computers. These top players spend huge amounts of time researching openings and looking for novelties in openings, using computers to help them do their research. So, working with computers has now become an integral part of the game. It's kind of like, in many sports where the technology has enabled the athlete to get better, and it's really technology becomes the key vector of competition.
This actually happened in the NBA. This happened in the NBA where there's a special technology for 3-point shooting and your form, et cetera. And the Knicks actually and a couple of other teams implemented it a couple of years ago. And you saw the entire team became better at 3-point shooting. So people who were, 200%, 300%, moved up 10, 20% each. But this kid is clearly cheating because he's cheated in the past. And people who cheat in the past cheat in the future is my basic belief. So this guy, Neiman, publicly admitted that he used electronic devices to cheat when he was just a kid on online games when he was 12 to 16 years old. So then the question is, like...
No, but Jason, it's worse than that, I think, because then chess.com came out and said, actually, the cheating was more rampant than just those two incidents.
Their algorithm determined it, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely cheating. So why are people playing with him?
Well, because he said that...
Yeah.
He said those games were not for money, and he was just going to build his rating fast. And
it's like the poker guys who cheat. If you're a poker guy and you've cheated before, you never play with those players again. They're cheaters. It's obvious.
But
and
the issue here is that this was an over-the-board tournament where the one that Magnus pulled out of in order to protest. So the question is, how could he have been cheating?
Right.
Now, I think what adds to the complexity of it is that you have to remember that when you're dealing with a player, look, if it was us playing Magnus, we'd need to cheat on every single move. But if you're a 26 or 2700 player and, Magnus is at 2860 or something, the higher the rating, the better in chess. It's called the ELO. But in any event, if you're like a 26, 2700 player like Niemann, you only need help with a few moves in the game. In other words, if you could get a tip at a critical moment of the game, that might be all you need to put you over the top. You wouldn't need to, in other words, to beat Magnus, you wouldn't need to cheat on every move. You could just, if you just cheat on 2 or 3 moves at the right time, that could put you over the top.
So something could vibrate on your leg 4 times and then 2 times over to tell you which piece to move.
That's what they were saying, Jake. Like he had like a vibrator in his foot or the shoe.
Where was the vibrator?
In his shoe.
There was a meme that became like a whole thing where it was like he had something in his butt or something.
He had an anus chess computer? An anal chess computer is what you're saying?
Okay, no, look, that's not real. Somebody speculated on Reddit.
Someone made it, and then it became
Somebody did a Reddit post saying that he was being communicated with through vibrating anal beads, and then that went viral. Elon tweeted it, although I think he deleted it. Look, it's absurd, but the point is, there is a question of how would he have done it if he did it. Yeah. And there have been cases before, though, of people getting caught. People getting caught going to the bathroom and then, checking their phone. Yeah,
there's a Bulgarian grandmaster. He got caught in the bathroom checking his phone. And
oh God,
metal detectors on the way in, and they have RF detectors in the room, right? So they look for any sort of communication. I think didn't they say they had that going into this event?
You just could have nobody watching live.
No, they did it after.
Make it a half-hour delay.
The Stringfield Cup added a 15-minute delay after these accusations. So yeah, I think there are going to be more precautions, basically. But we still haven't heard from Magnus what made him think that there was foul play here in this particular game, and he's been very reluctant to. He won't say anything. It's sort of passive aggressive. Now the flip side of it is that Magnus Carlsen has been the #1 player in chess for over a decade, and he's a very classy player. I mean, I don't, everyone's. Never heard a word said about him that, was, now he can be cocky. He can definitely be cocky, but, he's a very classy player. So I just don't see him doing something like this lightly. So that's what's so
dramatic
hard to understand about it. Dramatic is, it's really hard to understand how Niemann could have cheated, but also Magnus doesn't seem like the kind of player to just make a wild, impulsive allegation. So this is why the chess world's just been really roiled by this.
Is there like any kind of equivalent of like PED scandal here? Like people taking Adderall or Provigil or any other kind of nootropics to get an edge?
There's a good documentary. I think it was on Vice on how a lot of the top chess players actually get ready for matches. And they're incredibly diligent about their sleep, their workout routine, alcohol. They do take supplements. I forgot who made the documentary, but it's actually incredibly intense how physical these people are.
One game of classical chess can burn like over 2,000 calories or something like that. Like the amount of calories that get burned just by using your brain so intensely.
Adderall is rampant in the poker community, especially in tournaments. So when you play the higher tournaments, and I played them, and I just kind of step in and it's I felt very underpowered relative to the kids I was playing with because they were all on Adderall.
Well, these are 12 hours. Well, it's 10-hour sessions over 12 hours.
10-hour sessions. Right? It's exhausting. It's really, really physically exhausting to play. That's why I stopped playing tournaments about a decade ago. I just couldn't sit there for that long.
Can't justify the time suck of it too.
It's just so physically and emotionally demanding to be able to play that well and make no mistakes over 10 hours. And so, the only solution that all these kids would turn to was Adderall. And I was like, this is not worth it for me. So I stopped playing in tournaments, and which was too bad because I thought like I could have a real chance of actually doing reasonably well in some of these things. And I just gave up. By the way, the other thing I wanted to mention is there's been like cheating in all these other kind of sports, and it always gets exposed, like whether it's, the Tour de France, it turned out that everybody was using PEDs, or, the Russian Olympic team, everybody was using PEDs.
New England Patriots stealing signals.
Yeah.